Hey, it's Chris from the Felt Recoil Podcast. And before we start the show, I want to tell you about EnduringWarrior.org. That's the website for Operation Enduring Warrior. It is a 100% volunteer organization whose mission is to honor, empower, and motivate our nation's wounded veterans through a physical, mental, and emotional rehabilitation. Here's how that breaks down in the real world. I have seen these guys in action. It's really unbelievable. It's almost surreal. You're dealing with combat wounded veterans mainly, and you see a really rolling thunder of guys come across the hill, and they're dressed in gas masks and camouflage clothing. It'll take your breath away, and then they're competing in what is basically a Tough Mudder style event to raise awareness for their cause. Find more information about them at EnduringWarrior.org, and ultimately, you'll be enabling the lives of wounded veterans to go in directions they might have thought were impossible up until now, but this organization is getting out there and helping them get on with life because they sacrificed so much for us. Felt Recoil Podcast starts now.
This is Felt Recoil.
Great group of guys. I shot a gun for the first time with my wife, and it was amazing. Christopher Vermillion is a great guy. He helped me not feel intimidated by it all. And he told me The Walking Dead ain't real, man. He said there's no way that Rick from The Walking Dead can shoot a gun and just hold that python like that. There's no way.
All right, welcome. It's the Felt Recoil Podcast. This is number 20. My name is Chris. Across from me, my ever hetero life mate
is Patrick.
There you go, buddy. How are you tonight?
I'm pretty good. And yourself?
I'm very excited. So, quick introduction, and then we're going to jump right onto the phone with a super special VIP guest. A while back, I'm perusing YouTube, as I like to do, and I stumbled across a page called Active Self-Protection. Back in its humble beginnings when he only had, I think 40 million views on YouTube or something like that. And so I started subscribing, and I joined a little community, and I've invited John Correa on to join us tonight. He's here with us from Active Self-Protection. John, how are you, sir?
Hey, man, every day's a holiday and every meal's a feast. Thanks for having me on.
John Correa from Active Self-Protection does a pretty interesting thing. If you haven't seen him on the YouTubes, go find Active Self-Protection on YouTube and click subscribe. What John does is he takes videos of actual, sometimes deadly, sometimes non-lethal, violent encounters from around the world, and he kind of narrates the way through it for you and me to learn a lesson of how to get out of those situations alive. John, let's dig into your background just a little bit, and then we're going to play one question 5 times. You were in the Navy, correct?
I was, yeah. My first big boy job. I made hot water the hard way for Uncle Sam for 8 years. Oh. Which the hard way to make hot water is splitting atoms. It sounds really impressive when you say I was a nuclear reactor operator.
Really? What were you on?
I was on the USS John C. Stennis, CVN 74. She's up in Washington now. She's in San Diego when I was on her. Okay. But I had a weird Navy career, man. I was in for 8 years, and I spent 7 days at sea. So I didn't do a whole lot. I made hot water some, and I had a weird career and enjoyed my time in the Navy. Learned a lot. Very grateful for it. So glad to be a veteran.
I'm very excited to hear my dad's thoughts on that answer because my dad was on the Nimitz for 6 years and was never home. That's half the reason.
Yeah, no
he
kidding.
got out. He was out at sea.
It was. To the paraphrase story, man, I enlisted. Nuke school is 2 years long. Went through that. Got picked up for a commissioning program. So I went to college for 3 years as an officer candidate. About 16 weeks before my commission, I got rear-ended by a drunk driver and blew out 2 discs in my back. Whoa. Words. The Navy and I stopped getting along real well. So I declined my commission because I didn't feel like I could make it through OCS. And so on a bum back, so they sent me to the Stennis. I was on her for a little while. She had just gotten home from a Western Pacific deployment, so we weren't going anywhere. Then my back really started acting up, kicked me off the boat, did 2 surgeries on my back, and then, told me thanks for your interest in national defense and don't let the door hit you where the Lord split you.
Really?
So 8 years in, 7 days at sea, an interesting career. Was very, very close to, receiving my commission, ended up having to decline it. And I'm super grateful for it the whole time. God's hands in all of it. It's all good. But so I'm very glad my son actually enlists in June to go and do the very thing I used to do. He's going to go be a Navy nuclear operator. So it's pretty cool to pass that tradition on in the family.
Very cool.
Couldn't talk him out of it, huh?
You know, it's funny. I tried to, but they threw so much money at him, he couldn't say no.
Yeah, well, good for him. Good for him. All right, well, we're going to play 5 questions one time. But first, I want to remind everybody, this is John Correa we're with from Active Self Protection. You can go to activeselfprotection.com or really get on all the socials, but especially YouTube and Facebook, and look up Active Self Protection. We'll dive into more of it in just a second. But let's play one question 5 times. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, John, what's the one gun everybody should own?
You know, I don't know if anybody's ever answered this for you. I think the one gun everybody should own is a Marlin 39A.
That is a first.
It's the oldest continuously produced shoulder-fired firearm in the world. And I think everybody should own one. It's been produced, started, I think, as a model 1871, and it was the first rifle ever chambered in .22 long rifle.
Oh, good. I don't have to Google what it is then.
There you go. Model 39A is a fantastic rifle for kids to learn on, and a great rifle. I use my 39A for squirrel hunting every year, and I just think it's one that everybody should own.
All right. What's the one book everybody should read?
Well, I mean, I'd be remiss, you know, my real life, I'm a pastor. So, of course, I'd say the Bible. And within that, if you wanted a book within that, since the Bible's a collection of books, I would say the Gospel of John. If you haven't read that, you definitely should. If you wanted to look outside of that into the secular world, I think that every human being should read the original Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Let me digress for a quick second and give some inside baseball information. We sat down with an interview this weekend with a gentleman named Brian Norris, who is also a pastor out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And Brian writes for a couple of big names in the industry. He's more of a writer than anything. He writes for Arms Guide. He's you can see his stuff on Ammo Land and SOFREP. He's got some pretty deep connections, but his answer was verbatim exactly the same as yours. He said, you got to read the Bible, and more specifically, read the book of John. But his interview will air next week. But anyway, very interesting, very cool. All right, and then How to Win Friends and Influence People. What's the one album you think everyone should own?
I'm gonna go and show how old I am at this point. I am a music fan, but you know, I got to hark back a little bit. I won my wife with James Taylor's Greatest Hits, and so you know, James Taylor has got pipes and musical ability, and his guitar is, I mean, it's something else. It's old folk music, you know. Is his
famous classic Awkwardly on a Stage with John Kerry in front of Russians, is that one on that album? I can't remember. I think it is.
I think it is.
Yeah, I think that was on there.
It's actually funny because Chris and I have had this conversation before about what a talented guy he is.
Yeah, well,
he's just a little bit of a whack job.
Hey, they're all that way, though. I'm a Dave Matthews fan through and through, but good grief.
Yeah, total whack job. But an incredible voice and an incredible talent. And like I say, singing his songs to my wife on the road, won her heart. So that's the one.
Are you musically inclined? You play any instruments?
You know, I can carry a tune in a bucket if you provide the bucket.
No, we'll be happy to. We'll be happy to. The name Felt Recoil came from an office banter one day where they were talking about if you had to name a band, what would your band name be? And I said Felt Recoil. And everybody said, oh, that's a great band name. And then later as we developed a podcast and all that.
Well, we decided we weren't that good at music. So
yeah,
we'll just talk to people instead.
Those dreams died at the next karaoke bar. All right, what's the one film you think everybody should see?
Ooh, man, this one's tough. I'm a movie buff, and so there's so many good ones. But if there's one that I think just encapsulates everything that a great movie needs, it would be the 2001 remake of The Count of Monte Cristo with Jim Caviezel.
Yes, that's an excellent film. That is Guy Pearce is excellent in that movie.
Yes, and
fantastic.
It's got everything a great movie needs in it. You know, it's got intrigue and revenge and love and. It's just, man, it's good on friendship, so many levels. So that's the one.
And anybody out there would be lying. Anyone you ever meet would be lying to your face if we haven't fantasized about just absolutely not just getting even, but going above the pale against everybody that's ever done us wrong. Yeah. So, all right. What is the one piece of advice you would offer your 18-year-old self?
Man, I really thought about this one a bit. And the one piece of advice that I wish I could give to myself starting out in the world was that at the end of your life, no one cares about your accomplishments, but they do care about how you treated people. And nobody will build a monument to your accomplishments, but how you treat people resonates in the world after you're gone.
That's excellent advice. Nobody cares about your accomplishments, but they'll care about how you treat people.
Yep.
100%. All right, I'm going to throw in a bonus question because I stalk you online. I happen to know that you're a bit of a grill meister. You're kind of getting into some barbecue competitions, correct?
Yes, that's correct. We do have a competition barbecue team at our church, and we've run a few comps, and we cook for some folks. And I just like I like making flesh.
And you actually, that's good. I'm reminded right now that you already did a what was it called? Bible, Bullets, and Barbecue Conference? Is that what you did?
Yes. So annually we do the Bullets and Bibles conference that we are now calling Bullets, Bibles, and Barbecue, where we do a whole weekend of training, 20 hours of training. We eat barbecue and we start the morning off with some Bible studies and stuff like that. And it's a fun weekend. We do it in October, and they are just a blast, man. It's a very unique group. We have conference style, so it's there's usually 3 classes going on at once that people can choose from. And this last one we did simunitions, and we did long range shooting, and we did the whole 9 yards. So ran the FBI qual for people that to have a national standard. It's a fun time. So good stuff.
All right. So as a reminder, this is John Correa of ActiveSelfProtection.com on the phone with us, and we're going to ask out of left field here. This is a very selfish question for me. Yep. What's your advice? What's the best way to cook a steak at home, and what's the best cut to buy to do that?
Man, the best cut is a personal decision. Personally, I feel like the best cut on a cow is the ribeye. I think a ribeye steak is the most flavorful, the most marbled, the juiciest, the most flavorful. So, man, you can't go wrong with a great a New York strip. You can't go wrong with a great filet. So that means a T-bone's great too, and a porterhouse is great too. But if you gave me a choice, you can have any steak you want, John. Give me a ribeye all day, every day. How to cook it? Man, beef always needs salt. So you got to salt beef. If you cook beef without salt, that's a capital offense. So I like, either just salt and pepper or, like a Montreal steak season on it.
Heck yeah.
And then the best way to get amazing steak. Now, if you really want the best steak you've ever had in your life, what you do is you buy the ribeye whole. So you don't get ribeye steaks, you get a ribeye. And you smoke that ribeye for put a good rub on it, put it in your smoker for about 5 hours at 225 until the inside of it's right at 125 degrees. That's too rare to eat. You let it rest for an hour. You cut the steaks off of it. Now, if you just ate it like that, it would taste like a prime rib. It's all medium rare all the way through, or really rare at that point. But then what you do is you fire up your grill, and you get that grill rocket hot. If you don't have a grill, put it on your stovetop with a cast iron skillet, and get that cast iron skillet absolutely rocket hot with a little bit of oil on it, and then sear it hard for at most 30 seconds on each side. Rocket hot 30 seconds, and you have a medium rare steak all the way through that the one side, the side that was next to the bone is just beefy, and the side that was exposed to the smoke is smoky, and you got a hot sear on it. So you got some crusty bits on it and good seasoning. And man, that's a little slice of heaven right there.
I skipped past mouth watering, and I'm actually drooling on myself right now.
Super hard. You were talking about doing cardio off the air earlier, but I'm going to skip that part and just go to the steak.
That's right. We don't need cardio. We need steak.
ActiveSelfProtection.com. This is John Correa with us. One thing I love about you, you're one of the few people out there that gives away so much knowledge for free. And when you get on YouTube, especially, and watch some of your videos, you tend to get about 3 to 5 lessons. Then you always encourage, there's usually about 5 to 8 lessons on the website, and you link everything below. Then you get all this free knowledge. So it just feels like if I become a part of the community, there's probably so much more behind the veil, behind the curtain, really, that I'm not actually getting just from watching the stuff on the YouTubes. What was the catalyst for you getting into self-protection analysis, as it were? What's your history getting into where you are now?
It's one of those things where I never intended to do it. Just like a lot of people, So when I got out of the service, I decided to go to grad school to be a pastor. I became a Christian while I was in the Navy. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. So anyways, we moved to Phoenix for me to go to school, went to school, and had a family to feed. I had 3 small children. So I worked full-time in retail is what I did all the way through seminary. And, for those who don't know, a master's degree at seminary is like 3 regular master's degree. I had a 96-hour master's degree. So, most are about 30. So while I was doing that, I ran a video game store. I actually was, in charge of between 1 and 3 Hollywood Videos and Game Crazies at various times that I worked for the founder of the company. So anyways, when the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 came out, man, there was just tons of news stories of managers getting mugged and stabbed and shot for Xboxes. And I was like, man, that's just not going to be me. I live in Arizona. We can have a CCW and carry.
Yeah.
And so at the same time, so I did. I went and got my CCW. I bought, a defensive firearm. I put it on my hip, and it was basically a magic talisman to ward away danger. It was a lucky rabbit's foot.
Sure.
If I had to use it, God help us all. But at about the same time, my son we were homeschooling at the time, and my son was in martial arts as an extracurricular activity, and he wanted me to take classes with him. Well, after I got out of seminary, he cajoled me into doing so. So I started taking martial arts with him. That was 11 years ago now. I was just supposed to do it for 6 months. Ended up, here I am 11 years later. And so all that, and I decided as I started really getting into firearms then and going, look, if I'm going to carry this gun, I better be able to use it. I'm also an entrepreneur at heart. And so I was like, man, I got to find a way for the government to subsidize my bullets. And, this is getting expensive. Every time I buy a gun, I got to be able to write this off. Well, the best way to do that is to have a business associated with it. And I'm a teacher at my core. So I started Active Self-Protection as a firearms training business. Basically, I went and got my NRA instructor certs and started teaching NRA classes. And then, Facebook started because I wanted to attract more people to classes. There's just not enough students, And so, started trying to get students to come to class with Facebook. Then this is the long story, I know, but then what happened is that it kind of became a game. My Facebook page is right now about 260,000 likes. And as I was trying to build it and get it moving, it was like, what is the best thing to do? And Facebook kind of goes through different phases where they like different stuff. And then they started liking videos. And so I had a couple that these people had sent me these surveillance videos of real life attacks. And I just posted a couple of them on the page, and people loved them. They really ate them up. And then I started typing a couple lessons in the description, like, hey guys, think about this while you're watching this video. And then it was a total fluke, man. Because I was doing a lot of Photoshop work, I had Adobe's Creative Suite, and somebody sent me a video that had this really long intro on it that it was like 3.5 minutes of nothing. And then all the action was the last 30 seconds. And I was like, dude, I wonder if I can use this other program, Premiere, to cut that off. And in learning how to do that, I found out that on my MacBook, I could actually record my voice and record it in Premiere and have it there. And that was what changed everything. So I just did a quick play-by-play and a voiceover, and that started everything in terms of what I'm known for now. So people ate those up. And so it's been over 2 years now that, we put out a new one every single day. People send me real life surveillance videos of muggings, stabbings, carjackings, armed robberies, kidnappings. And I narrate them. I do a play-by-play, and it's actually the way that I do it, I learned from the Navy. When I was in the Navy, anytime anybody had an incident on any nuclear reactor in the Navy, they would write up a full after-action report. Here's what happened. Here's any mistakes that were made. Here was any equipment failures that we had. Here's what we all need to learn by that and some things to be cautious of. And then they would send that out to every other ship in the fleet. Everybody that has a nuclear reactor has to read these in training. So these action reports were not designed to punish people, but to inform and educate the rest of the fleet so we didn't all make the same mistake.
Yeah.
And so that's been what I do with self-defense. So when somebody has a defensive encounter, a deadly force encounter, then I go, okay, so what went right? What went wrong? What do we all learn? Here are the principles that we can put into play as we train. So then that way we give ourselves the best chance to get out on top.
It's one of those things where the wise man learns from the mistakes of others. And there's no better way to learn that type of thing, I think, than by studying and observing these incidents as they unfold. Two things I want to touch on real quick. First of all, I love that you're big on verbal judo. You'll say a lot, like, don't get in a fight, work your way out of the fight. So I'm curious what you would say is the default mannerism or line of speech someone should use to get out of an altercation.
Well, so first of all, read the book Verbal Judo. It's a fantastic book. It will give you a ton of great information. And really what we do within that is we listen to somebody, we empathize, we ask them what's going on, we paraphrase, and then we suggest or we make, substitutions. This is what's available to you. So they call it the LEAPS method. And so that verbal judo is this idea of, hey, I want to talk to you. Can we talk, please? I think you're a good person. And so, it empathizes with people. It listens to them. It gives them some other stuff, and it gives them the ability to be important. So verbal judo is really all about the gentle art of persuasion. And it's not, a Jedi mind trick or anything like that. It's looking at people and saying, okay, how can I help you get what you want and save face? And, a lot of verbal judo is the ability and willingness to not get in ego fights, to say, hey man, I'm sorry. My bad. Let me buy you a beer, or, let me make it right for you. And being willing to eat crow and be, seen as wrong to stay out of fights.
John Correia from Active Self-Protection on the phone with us. One more thing I'm just curious about. I watch a lot of your stuff, and then I tend to walk away from it. I feel like I've ingested all this just, negative aspects of the world, the crime and the filth of the world. How do you separate that for yourself? How do you work in this 8, 9, 12 hours a day and then walk away from it and go, okay?
Well, let's be real. The real answer is Jesus. But I think some of the rest of it is I recognize that, you don't have to get muddy yourself to watch other people play in the mud. And I watch and I see, the thing that I do when I'm looking at the videos, because I've probably watched 6,000 gunfights at this point. For every one I narrate, I watch 10. You look at it from a place of a tactician or an educator, and there's some. I'll tell you, there are a few videos that I watch that I have never narrated because they so shocked me that I just was like, man, that's just blood curdling. And if that affected me that way, there's no way that I'm going to put that out to the public.
Yeah.
But I think the other part of it is you recognize how rare evil people are. However you want to talk about that. You want to talk about sheepdogs and wolves, or regular people and defenders and predators. True predators are very rare. Most people are just decent folks and are just trying to get through life and mean no one any harm beyond the average, domestic problem or something like that. Most people are decent folk. And so that 1% of people who are just evil, and there are evil people in the world, you just recognize they're so rare. And my job is to help the good ones. And if doing the videos helps the good ones, and I know it does, I get messages every week from people who say, hey man, you saved my life. And of course I always say, I didn't save your life. You saved your life. How did I help you? What did I give you that you saved your life? I didn't do nothing. And, people are like, hey man, I saw this and this is a situation I got in and I heard your voice in my head. And I was like, oh no, I'm not going to be on an Ask video. And I got out of there or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's good, man. It's a good goal to never be on one of my videos. That's good.
I have seen some active self-protection videos where you've brought people in that were in the videos and had them recount things with you.
I always try, man. We've only had it happen a couple of times. But man, any chance I can that I can talk to the victim, that I can talk to the person who was attacked, that's the best, because then you get so one of the things we learned at the place that I train martial arts at, Attitude First Martial Arts Academy here in Phoenix, is that, you know, you have 3 points of view. The first point of view is your point of view as the defender. The second point of view is the point of view of the attacker, of the bad guy. And then there's a third point of view of an observer. Well, video is a third point of view. You're seeing things from outside who it is. And anytime you can get that first point of view, I think that makes it far more powerful. And like I said, I've only been able to do that a couple of times, but being able to actually have them relate their experiences and see what happened in their eyes and how that's affected them, I think those are the very best training lessons of all.
John Correia, ActiveSelfProtection.com is the website. Find him on YouTube as well. I think you're close to 100 million views now on YouTube.
Real close. We're about 97 million views today on YouTube. So it's crazy, man. We got 280,000 subscribers right now, and we're reaching about 15 million views a month.
Well, I mean, after the Felt Recoil podcast, you're just going to ride over that hill, my friend.
The old Felt Recoil bump.
I like how hard he laughed. Okay. Have fun in your office. All right, John, really, really appreciative of you coming on and taking the time, man. I know you're busy. You mentioned you'll be at the NRA show end of the month?
Yes, sir. I'll be there all weekend long. You know, we go and wander the floor and meet people and see stuff and have fun. And, you know, we're going to have a get together just to hang out with our with the patron members. And I always love to see instructors there that are in my instructor development portal, and just anybody. You know, we go and it's really funny that at SHOT Show, a lot of companies don't launch products and they wait for NRA.
Yeah.
We're expecting to see the new Glock models, Gen 5 they're supposed to announce, I think.
Boy,
so that's pretty exciting.
If it's not that M17, then I don't want to talk about it. They can just keep it.
I mean, that's what it's going to be. What they were calling that 17M is going to become Gen 5. It has to, you know.
Yeah, better if they're smart. That and the Hudson H9, I would agree with you. And you know, I think there's an important distinction there. SHOT Show, everybody gets worked up about SHOT Show, but SHOT Show is industry people talking to industry people.
Yep.
NRA is for the consumer, for the guy that's going to go and buy the product. So NRA is the show to go to, in my opinion. Everybody gets worked up about SHOT Show, but I don't need an ego massage.
I would agree.
They're different, and I love them both. And you know, you're right, because SHOT is industry people talking to industry people, so you get some more professional stuff there. But you know, man, if I have time for a quick story,
go ahead.
You know, at SHOT Show, the first time I ever went, I got to meet some of the marketing team, for instance, for like Daniel Defense, and they're great folks. That's my defensive rifle, and I think they make good stuff. Well, at NRA though, I got to meet Connor Daniel, who at the time was 7 years old, who I didn't know was the owner's son, because he was just out there handing out stickers.
Nice.
And hanging out, and he's become my buddy. You know, every time I see him now, every year at NRA, I grab some Legos and we sit and play Legos and hang out, and Connor's my bud. And dude, you see people with their kids at NRA and they do all kinds of fun stuff there. You know, it's last year they had a shooting range, you know, a little airsoft shooting range inside, and was so fun. And everybody is in great spirits, and you just see a much wider swath. It's end user central. So yeah, I love it. I think it's a great and different show. I can't wait to go.
Well, we're excited. We're going to be there just, you know, kind of strolling around, hanging around ourselves. So we hope to bump into you, and I'll definitely put the Patreon event on my calendar and come by and say, hey, get everything on tape, and say thanks in person. So
awesome, Chris. Looking forward to seeing you, man.
John, really, really appreciate it, man. Thanks for your time. John Correia.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Thanks, sir. ActiveSelfProtection.com. Make sure you visit him there and check him out on the socials as well. All right, here's a question for you. How do we be more like John Correia? I had something else planned I was going to ask you.
It's a solid question.
But now I need to know how to do that. All right. Hey, I do want to ask you a question, and take this seriously. It's going to sound like a ridiculous question, but you know, I have this habit of after I get a new gun, I will then go watch reviews, which is probably the opposite way to do things. But I don't want to hear everybody else's opinion about it before I buy it. Maybe that's my ego. But I also legitimately feel like one of the things everyone reviewing guns is doing is just trying to be the first to find something wrong with it. I've said that before.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
I get overwhelmed by the guys there's a guy on YouTube who his sole purpose is 3 videos just tearing the Springfield Armory Saint apart. Now, if you've ever dealt with firearms to any deep extent, you can watch his video and pretty quickly realize he's got a head spacing issue somehow with that rifle. So he sent it to Springfield and asked for a new one, and Springfield said, we don't do that. So he creates a 3-video series on everything wrong with his Saint, okay? And if you read his comments, people are going, well, I was going to buy one, but now I'm not. You probably weren't, though. If one guy telling you not to buy it convinces you not to buy it, you probably weren't going to buy it. Sorry for the tangent. My point is this. I tend to watch the videos later. So I was very, very fortunate that I have a Springfield Armory Saint. You have one on the way, Mr. Hulon.
It's already here.
Oh, you have one now?
I'm in the club.
Oh, you're in the club. Cool. Well, I just so happened about a week ago, I was able to secure a Daniel Defense V1.
And if you listened to last week's show, you already know this.
Yes. So I have it and I love it. Did you know I have a Daniel Defense?
I had heard something about it.
Did you want to see it? Okay. Here's what I got to thinking. Let's say you have $2,000. That's your budget. I'm really looking for answers here. $2,000 is your budget. And you're going to buy a rifle and you're going to buy accessories. Do you buy the $800 Springfield Armory Saint and then put $1,000 worth of accessories into it if you wanted, a legit ACOG on top, and then maybe a light because your budget's pretty much blown after the ACOG? Or would you buy the Daniel Defense and throw like a $300 Vortex on top? Because the V1, I think, is retail $16.99.
How about wild card answer?
All right, lay it on me.
I buy the Springfield,
Okay.
and then I spend a roughly equal amount of money finding a competent course to take, a competent trainer, and then whatever money I've got left over, I'm putting into ammo.
I got an idea for you. I had to find it in my notes. Bullets, Bible, and barbecue.
There you go.
Active self-protection. I don't know if he does carbine courses or not. I'm sure he does. Haley Strategic does. Carbine darkness. Holy moly.
Sure.
So what you're saying is get a rifle that works and then dump the money into training and be that much better with it. Nice wild card answer.
That's ready for a loop there? You
A
weren't
little
ready
bit.
for that, were you?
Well, no, not really. I can't really decide. I love both rifles equally. Maybe the Daniel Defense a little bit more, just for the sake of it. Such a beautiful rifle. Did you want to look at it? It's a Daniel Defense. You can look at it if you want.
When the show's over, Chris,
okay.
I'll look at it.
All right. Are you sure?
I'm probably going to sign my name on it so you stop asking me.
Okay. Hey, make sure you check feltrecoilshow.com and get all the info on this week's guest, John Correa. And if you are going to go to the NRA show, look us up. We'll be there too. I do want to say, by the way, congratulations. We did pick a winner, Braxton Witt. That's what I'm going to call him anyway, because I'm not sure on his last name. But we've talked via Facebook and a few other places. He won the Anderson Manufacturing lower receiver and the 2 Daniel Defense 32-round magazines. And we're going to meet up with him sometime in the very near future and hand those over to him. We're going to film the whole thing. He was cool with that. So we're looking forward to meeting him as well. Sorry. Can you help me understand what's going on with Susan Rice right now?
No, sir, I cannot.
I've been a little under the weather, as you can probably tell from my voice. I was in bed for 2 full days, legitimately, because I'm a big baby. And I was trying to read through this morning a little bit. I'm on enough medication right now to kill a common house pet. Let's just say that, okay? If you have like a medium-sized cat or dog, the meds I'm on right now would probably just tank it for life. I've got Dayquil in the system. I'm also taking Cold-EEZE and shots of NyQuil throughout the day and Ricolas. So I was reading the National Review article of exactly what is happening with Susan Rice, and it was making my head hurt even worse than it does from the head cold. Am I understanding this correctly?
I try to stay on top of these things. I really do.
Yes, sir.
However, last week I was out of town. Went on a little vacation up to the mountains, and I wouldn't say I was cut off, but my news consumption was pretty low. So I don't actually know what's happening, and I've been playing catch up at work, so I haven't really had time to dive into this thing and see what's actually going on. So if you want to fill me in, if you can, I'm all ears, because I really don't know what's going on.
Well, let me not say that I blame you, because at some point you have to turn it off. You cannot constantly consume this stuff, which is why I asked John that question of how do you compartmentalize what you're dealing with? I asked a police officer friend that recently, where I said, I work in retail, so sometimes I get home at night and I know my wife thinks I'm mad at her. The kids think I'm frustrated with them. But the fact is, on some days, all I've done is dealt with morons all day,
quiet
all day. And I can't, and it's not that they are, right. I need a point where I can just go, and I don't have to answer any questions. And I don't have to, it should be easier than I make it. I'm not blaming anyone other than myself. What I'm saying is, if I get a half-hour ride home, how can I go ahead and take all that junk from work, put it in its compartment, and get home and open the other compartment and deal with that? And I asked a police officer friend of mine, I said, I know you deal with much worse things than I ever will. I just deal with idiots legitimately. Can I just say legitimately? Here's the thread of messages that I dealt with a guy today. Question. This is no joke. Question. Is there a shipping fee for sending guns to your store? My response, yes, there's a standard shipping fee that applies. Thank you. You're welcome. Next message. Hello.
Same guy.
Same guy.
Okay.
Same guy.
Same thread, essentially.
Same thread. Yes, I'm telling you, conversation between me and dude. Next thing he sends, a few weeks later, hello, I ordered a firearm and it charged me shipping. Here's my order number so you can refund the shipping charges. To which I had to reply, shipping applies on firearm purchases sent to the store. And he goes, oh, my impression was if I bought a gun, you didn't charge shipping if I sent it to the store.
I hope you just replied, scroll up.
You can't, right? You have to stick to the script. You have to, the power of habit. You have to go back and say, sorry, that was your impression, but please remember this is the policy. You have to be nice to these people.
Drop some verbal judo on him, did you?
Yeah, well, no, I didn't. Well, maybe I did.
Yeah, I think you did. You just didn't know it.
I just get so frustrated. So I don't know how to turn it all off. So my point in all that is, that's why I asked John how he does it. He says his faith. You look at the news, and I think actually that was a very profound answer. I don't use that word lightly either, to say, let's recognize that these people are the minority. Not because she's black, okay? Not because she's black, but because she's evil, okay? And she's not evil because she's black. She's just evil because she's evil, okay? Alan West forever. See? Not racist. So Susan Rice is an evil person. She lied about Benghazi. Chris Paronto, by the way, Tonto from 13 Hours. If you're not following that fella on Twitter, get on Twitter and follow him now, because he is lambasting her to the nth degree. It's fantastic. All right. So what's been going on? Well, a Watergate-style scandal. Here's kind of the important takeaway, okay? We've been told, this is from nationalreview.com, we've been told for weeks that any unmasking of people in Trump's circle that may have occurred had two innocent explanations. One, the FBI's investigation of Russian meddling in the election, and or two, the need to know, for purposes of understanding the communications of foreign intelligence targets, the identities of Americans incidentally intercepted or mentioned. Okay? Let me repeat that second part because I mucked it up so bad. So number one is the FBI's investigation of Russian meddling in the election.
Those damned Russians.
Or number two, that they need to know, for purposes of understanding the communications of foreign intelligence targets, the identities of Americans incidentally intercepted or mentioned. So they're watching foreign targets, but in order to understand exactly who they are, they need to know the Americans talking to them. So, according to the National Review, that won't wash, because in general, there's only three places that investigate these types of incidences. That's the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA. Okay. So why was the White House looking into this? Well, that means that Susan Rice or President Obama would have had to have asked, who are the Americans? And they would have needed a pretty solid reason for asking, though if I'm understanding this correctly, is unprecedented for them to ask. Let's get to the pertinent part here. Here's 3 interesting points. It appears very likely that Susan Rice was involved in the unmasking of Michael Flynn. Was she also monitoring the FBI's investigation? Was she involved in the administration's consideration of bogus criminal charges against Flynn with the subsequent decision to have the FBI interrogate Flynn or grill him, as the New York Times puts it? The second point, I love this. While not a pillar of rectitude, Miss Rice is not an idiot. Besides being shrewd, she was a highly involved, highly informed consumer of intelligence and a key Obama political collaborator. Unlike the casual reader, she would have known who the Trump team players were without needing to have their identities unmasked. Third, and finally, the dissemination chain Rice had in mind. The most telling remark that former Obama Deputy Defense Secretary Evelyn Farkas made in her now infamous MSNBC interview was the throwaway line at the end, "That's why you have all the leaking." Put into context, Farkas had left the Obama administration in 2015, subsequently joining the presidential campaign of Hillary Clinton, Trump's opponent. She told MSNBC that she had been encouraging her former Obama administration colleagues and members of Congress to seek, quote, as much information as you can from the intelligence community, quote, that's why you have the leaking. So, to summarize at a high level, officials like Susan Rice had names unmasked that would not ordinarily be unmasked. That information was then being pushed widely throughout the intelligence community, particularly after Obama, toward the end of his presidency, suddenly and seemingly apropos of nothing, changed the rules so that all of the intelligence agencies, not just the collecting agencies, the 3 I mentioned before, could have access to raw intelligence information. 2 weeks ago, Rice was asked in an interview about allegations by House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes that the Obama administration had unmasked Trump team members. Rice said, quote, I know nothing about this. I was surprised to see reports from Chairman Nunes on that count today. Well, at least she didn't blame it on a video. That's nationalreview.com, written by Andrew C. McCarthy, Senior Policy Fellow at the National Review Institute. So what does all that mean, right? What does it all mean? It means that Obama's national security advisor, Susan Rice, was pressuring the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA to tell the Trump administration who was working with Donald Trump to transition him into power inside of the White House, and asking who they were talking to during the transition process. Meaning the American government, the Obama administration, was spying on the incoming president in order to leak and influence who he could have in his cabinet and in the White House before he even got there. That's what all of that means. They were creating hit jobs on people like Michael Flynn. If they could have, they'd have gone after Gorsuch and people of that nature. The Obama administration tactfully and really recklessly leaked classified information so that they could destroy the incoming administration. That's what it boils down to.
So there was a handful of generals and a select group of other folks that Trump had initially picked for his cabinet, and several people turned down the job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, yeah.
I couldn't tell you how many, but it feels like there was a handful.
Mm-hmm.
What are the odds that some of those people knew that they were being spied on?
Yeah.
And they were like, nope, don't want any part of that.
Not going to do that. Yeah, I wouldn't. It is absolutely sobering to consider the level of corruption there. It reaches a point where you start to ask yourself, at what point do we take on that moral obligation to, let's see, how's the phrase go? To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. You ready? that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. It's a serious question we have to start asking ourselves and I think it all happens, by the way, at the polling booth. I do. These people that argue for term limits, I think, are crazy because there already are term limits. They're at the polling station. Just go there and vote against those people. Get Lindsey Graham out of office. Get the people who go there.
Oh, don't be mean to Lindsey.
Sorry about that. But the people who've made a career out of quote unquote representing us, get rid of them. Get rid of them. And put new people in power. Alter and abolish the government. Do it. Do it next time you get the chance. Or don't gripe about it. But I'll tell you what, Susan Rice, Barack Obama, they make you wonder, like, at what point do we literally just go up there with pitchforks and run everybody out of town? It drives me crazy.
It's pretty crazy for me to think about the fact that they put that in the Declaration. That's some serious forethought.
Yeah. That, and they were declaring war on the Brits.
Sure. I mean, that's
arrogant schmucks.
That's a pretty good look into the life they were living at the time, right?
Yeah. It does make you wonder, right? Like, I think we take it for granted that these guys were basically signing a death warrant. You know, we look at it today. I saw a guy mention on Facebook the other day, said, well, you know, you can take up your arms or whatever, but the government's got warthogs. And I thought, yeah, I get that. Like, they could obliterate us a neighborhood at a time. I get it. Totally. But do you think that the way I feel about that, the daunting peril, do you think that's any different than the way the founders thought? They took on the heaviest armed military in the world at the time and said, well, you know, middle finger to you. We're done with it. We're done with it. And then they wrote a letter and they all signed their names on it. And they said, hey, we're going to separate from you. We've petitioned numerous times. I did this thing not long ago where I took the grievances they list out and I put Barack Obama's grievances against the American people next to them. And everything they list out against the king, he's refused to assent to his. He has refused his assent to laws. He's forbidden governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance. He's refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people. He's called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant. Remember how they passed Obamacare? Came together at midnight and literally rammed it through the nuclear option. You can go on and on.
I had to read it to see what was in it.
Right. Within what, 30 minutes, right? Something like that? Yeah. Well, no. That wasn't it. It was you have to pass the law to find out what is in it. Yeah. She's an idiot. Like, how is she in office? How's Nancy Pelosi even in office when she will literally tell you the way to find out what the law is to make it law, and then it becomes law, and then you know what it is.
She's sort of ghoulish looking. I'm wondering if she's even still alive. Somebody's just propping her up.
She's
like
a demon.
Weekend at Bernie style.
She's one of those Halloween witches that's tied to a string and floats around on the broom. I see what you're saying. That sounds right. Sounds right to me. It's like I was watching a YouTube video today where a lawyer was driving. He's driving as an Uber driver. He gets pulled over because the police have been... have you seen this?
I have seen it. I know what you're talking about.
They've been monitoring his passenger. So they pulled the passenger out and he's recording everything. And the cop goes, turn that off. And he goes, I'm not going to turn it off. The cop,
new town ordinance?
Yeah, he goes, a new law. And he goes, what new law? And he goes, oh, the new one. And he's all like, look, man, I'm a lawyer. I know the law. I'm just doing this for extra money. Like, what law says I can't record police in public space? Oh, it's a new one. He's like, okay. And then he's just kind of looking at his camera, shaking his head. It's like that. It's like people really believe that's the way things should work. Can you imagine if you lived in a world like that? Yes, you can. You would have Obamacare. Anyway, it drives me crazy.
And it's working out great for me so far.
All right, listen, thanks again to John Correa, ActiveSelfProtection.com. Go check him out. I'm going to take a week and rest the voice, and it'll get better, and I won't sound as raspy next week, unless you think it's super sexy. No?
No, I'm good.
I'm not going to get an honest answer out of you. Okay, all right. But check out ActiveSelfProtection.com. Here's what I love about the guy. John gives away so much information for free. So much free information. You can't consume it all. But for just $3 a month, You can go join his kind of patron group. You get into a private Facebook group. Doesn't cost you a lot, and then you learn a whole lot more and get to interact with other people and get other opinions. So it's pretty cool. ActiveSelfProtection.com. We'll have a little bit about John and his website up at FeltRecoilShow.com as well if you want to check that out. Join us next week. Our guest Brian Norris will be here. He's going to talk with us, as you heard me mention to John, a little bit about life as a pastor, and it's going to get a little bit more spiritual than you might be comfortable with, but it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll see you next time on the Felt Recoil Podcast.